Hello students, though I have already taught you about labor cost control in the classes, I thought of still teaching you about the same once again so that I refresh your memory about it. So let's understand what labor cost is all about. First of all, let's understand what is labor. Labor refers to the people who are working in an organization, which means the employees of the organization. And labor cost is the money that is spent by the organization in terms of wages paid to those employees. Now, one may think that because of a lot of automation, a company may not be incurring much cost with respect to labor, but that's not the case. As you all know, we have four factors of production, that is materials, machine, money, and management. Amongst this, management refers to the people, and money, machine, and materials are all inanimate factors of production. To activate them, we need to have people, and therefore, in spite of automation being there in an increasing way, we find that people are also increasingly employed to activate the other factors of production, and therefore companies incur a huge cost while paying wages to their employees. Therefore the companies have to take great care in ensuring that they appoint the right type of people for work within the organization, and they also control the costs that they incur with respect to the wages that they pay to these workers. Now, after material cost, labor cost is the second largest cost that is incurred in an organization. So the organization has to properly account for this cost and also ensure that they are controlling the amount of money spent on workers. Now, talking about labor, we have two classifications here, that's direct and indirect labor. Direct labor refers to the wages or money paid to those employees who are directly engaged in the production process of the organization. So, the money that you pay to a machine operator would be regarded as direct labor cost. Similarly, if the worker is working in a garment factory, obviously it is the tailor who will be directly involved in the production of a garment. So the wages that is paid to a tailor would be regarded as direct labor cost. On the other hand, indirect labor cost refers to all those costs or wages which are paid to the workers who are not directly engaged in the production process. In the same organization, you may find some set of people who may be sweepers, or who may be doing clerical jobs, or who may be working as security guards within the organization, or who may be just the supervisors. So such people are not directly involved in the production process. They only facilitate the production process. So therefore we call them as indirect labor, and the wages that are paid to them is called as indirect labor cost. Now let's understand uh, about the various departments that are some way related to payment of wages to labor. That is, what departments are involved in paying the wages to the workers of the organization. So here we have personnel department, timekeeping department, engineering department, and payroll department. Let me first start with the engineering department, because this is the department that first specifies what jobs are required to be done within the organization. So they lay down the requirements of the jobs to be done, and they make an analysis of the job. Similarly, they also work out the time and motion studies, that is how much time is required to complete a task, and towards completion of the task how much of body movement is required. So this is a scientifically designed study, and the engineering department apprises the management of all this information. Similarly, the engineering department specifies what would be the safe working conditions for a particular job and what kind of supervising activities would be required while the production process is going on. So once they lay down the different types of jobs that are required within the organization, make a analysis of the job and inform about the time and motion studies, the safe working conditions, as well as the supervising requirements for a particular job, then it is the turn of the personnel department to make arrangements for recruiting and selecting the right candidates. This is also of paramount importance because labor laws are quite strict, and you should therefore take a great deal of precaution in appointing the right person into the job. So there is a scientific process involved over here. You can take the help of some aptitude test, and you can understand the personality traits of the person whom you're recruiting, and you can select the individual. Costs are involved in sending out advertisements for job vacancies, or getting the services of some recruiting agencies. So therefore this is also a procedure which involves a lot of cost. Then once the right person is selected, that person has got to go through a training process within the organization so that he knows how exactly to do the job. For training the person also, the company incurs a lot of cost, and after which the company places the after successful completion of the training, the company places him on a specified job. Now suppose after placement of a person on a particular job, the company finds that he is not suitable for the job. The company may try to change his role and try to place him into a department or into a job which better suits him. So after the placement, the role of the personnel department is to ensure that the employee gives maximum productivity to the organization, and and the HR department, the personnel department, is also known as the HR department, and this department ensures that the employees are effectively used and their services are controlled, cost is controlled. Then we have the timekeeping department. This timekeeping department records the worker's time. They keep a note about when the worker has come inside the organization and when he's leaving the organization. They ensure that the attendance register is well maintained, and all the data is collected for the purposes of wage calculation. They also make a cost analysis and apportion the labor cost suitably. After which we have the payroll department. The role of the payroll department is to keep a record of the job classification and the wage rate of each employee. Then they also compute wages by preparing wage sheet or payroll, and they also are entrusted with the responsibility of disbursing the wages. Let us understand about labor turnover. Now, labor turnover in simple words would mean the number of employees who are leaving an organization at any point of time. So, if at a particular point of time there are a lot of people leaving the organization, it indicates that there is something wrong, and we call it as a high labor turnover. Whereas if at a particular point of time less number of people are leaving the organization, we call it as a low labor turnover, and it is quite normal for some people to leave the organization. But if there is a huge number of people leaving, and especially if it's happening quite often, then we call it as high labor turnover, and it does not speak well about the working of the organization. A small change in the labor force or the workforce is quite accepted and is considered as normal. So a definition has been given in this respect, which is read as follows. It is the rate of change in the composition of the labor force in an organization. So this, the number of people who can move from the organization, leave the organization, it can vary between different trades and industries. We have observed in the software industry, that is when the time the software industry had just started, there was less labor turnover. But after a period of years, after a number of years, when many software companies came into the market, and there was a lot of competition amongst these software companies, we saw a huge labor turnover happening within each organization. So employees used to leave their present organization after a few months of training, and they would jump to another organization because they used to get a few thousands more over there. And companies uh, incurred huge cost, because after they had finished training their employees, they found that those employees themselves were leaving their organization and jumping over to the other organizations. So they never got anything back from the employees. So then, to arrest this kind of an attrition, what the companies did was they started offering them free higher educational courses or subsidized higher educational courses, so that that motivated them to stay back with the company, at least until the completion of the course. So these were some methods by which the companies tried to retain the employees in the organization and tried to promote them if they would complete their course. So to, if there's a lot of labor turnover happening in the organization, then that is going to be a, a very costly proposition to the company, whereas low labor turnover is going to be beneficial to the company. Now, labor turnover is higher in factories where part-time and seasonal labor is employed. So this is much more in these kind of organizations, because the people are working in seasonal kind of work. So here we have the causes of labor turnover. Some are avoidable causes and other are unavoidable causes. Avoidable causes of labor turnover are the conditions within the organization. So avoidable causes means that the company can avoid these conditions and therefore can retain the employees and not incur huge costs because of them going away from the organization. Now, what are these avoidable causes? Avoidable causes are lack of planning, lack of proper selection, training. So if you have not properly selected the candidate, it's not the right candidate is not placed on the right job, then it is going to lead to dissatisfaction amongst the employees, and that might propel them to leave the organization. If the employees are not happy with the wages that is being paid to them, or they are not happy with the working conditions, that also might propel them to leave the organization. Also, if the employees are having strained relationship with their higher ups, that is their bosses, or with their peers, that is their colleagues, that also can make them want to leave the organization. Similarly, lack of proper amenities and benefits would also propel them to leave the organization. Now here the company can take certain measures to ensure that if there's improvisation of the conditions that I mentioned now, the companies can ensure that the employees remain within the organization. What are the unavoidable causes? These are causes which the company cannot help. These are external to the organization, and therefore the company cannot do anything to hold the employee back in the organization or stop him from leaving the organization. What are these situations? Now, if the employee is leaving the organization because he has got a better job prospect, which means that he has got a similar job in an other organization which is paying him more money, he would obviously leave this organization. Suppose there is some problem in the family, there is a elderly person to be taken care of, or the children are not being well taken care of, the employee may decide to leave the organization, or purely because of his own personal reasons like his own health conditions, he may decide to leave the organization. Now in this case the company cannot help when the employee is leaving the company. So another reason could be because of his retirement, or it could be on account of his death. Women generally leave organizations due to domestic responsibilities, or because of their marriage, and because they are settling down in a different place. And also there's a possibility that they may leave the organization because of pregnancy. Now, some other reason for a person to leave the organization is because the organization is compelled to take some disciplinary action against the employee. The disciplinary action could be because of the long absenteeism of the employee, or because of his antisocial or anti or criminal activities, or maybe he has breached the contract with the employer or with the organization. For these reasons, if the company has taken any disciplinary action, the company has to let go of the employee. So these are some of the reasons for labor turnover to happen, and not much can be done with respect to unavoidable causes. But of course, with respect to avoidable causes, the organization can make suitable working conditions, which is going to be helpful for both the employees as well as the organization. Now let's get to know the impact of labor turnover. Minimum level of labor turnover is inevitable in any organization. As I told you before, that some amount of people will at all times leave your organization, so you don't have to worry much about such a situation. And in fact it is good for the organization, because it helps in bringing new people with new ideas, new talent. So we call it as infusing of fresh blood. So you have more of, you can ask, you can bring in more of new or young people into the organization. And when such a thing happens, it helps in preventing stagnation. What this means is, if you have the same set of people remaining with your organization for many number of years, it can lead to stagnation and redundancy of ideas. So minimum labor turnover helps in preventing stagnation. The condition becomes alarming or dangerous when the labor turnover is huge. So, and it is also alarming especially if it is due to avoidable reasons. This I have already explained to you. And why is it going to be alarming is because you have already spent a lot of money in recruiting, selection, training and placement of these workers. So excessive labor turnover will be costly for the organization, and efforts has got to be made to minimize it. What is overtime? Overtime is when a worker works beyond the required time laid down by an organization. Generally, in most organizations, the normal working hours in a day is around 8 to 9 hours, and this is agreed upon under the Factories Act 1948 as well. Now, if a worker puts in more than 8 or 9 hours of work in a day, we call it as overtime. And the Factories Act 1948 also lays down that if a worker puts in any amount of work beyond the ordinary 8 to 9 hours, then he's supposed to be paid overtime charges at the rate of double the money that he was paid in his regular timings. So therefore, this overtime becomes costly for an organization, and the organization should ensure that this is avoided. Now, overtime may be preferable only when the company has got to meet certain deadlines, or in emergency conditions the company can resort to overtime. The disadvantage of overtime is one, it is costly for the organization. Also, it results in lower productivity of workers, because during the normal 8 to 9 hours of work, the worker is spending a lot of time and energy on his work. So after that time is over, generally speaking, the worker will not be able to work with that kind of efficiency as he had worked in the normal working hours. So therefore it should be avoided, because he's just putting in his time, but the efficiency is going to come down. Also, there will be more strain put on the plant and machinery, which means that plant and machinery has to run beyond 8 to 9 hours. So if he's putting in another 3 to 4 hours, there's more strain put on the plant and machinery. It also can very badly affect the health of the workers. No person can work continuously for very long periods of time. So this is going to endanger the health of the workers if it's continued in the long run. It can also make workers lethargic during normal working hours. So if a worker is continuously putting in overtime, then the next day obviously he is not going to be efficient during normal working hours. He's going to feel really lazy and lethargic. And also he's even during regular working hours, because he knows that he's going to work within during the overtime, he's going to remain lazy during the normal working hours. Now let's understand idle time. Idle time refers to the time that is lost before getting work, or in between work, when the worker is not doing his required job. That is called as idle time. Now here also you have got two types of idle time. One is called normal idle time, the other one is called as abnormal idle time. Normal idle time is the regular time which the worker is not working between shifts. So like in between his work, a worker may go to the restroom for some time, or he may go in for a coffee break, or he may go for a lunch break, or he may take some time off to rest. Now these are all required while he is working in a 8 to 9 hour shift. So the time that he is spending for such things during his 8 to 9 hour shift is called as normal idle time. Then you have the abnormal idle time. Abnormal idle time is the time that the worker is working, but he has not been able to work because of some inefficiency within the organization. Say for example, he's not given the work. He's waiting for his supervisors to tell him how exactly to go about doing the work. Now had the organization planned its activities well, this could have been avoided. Precious time could have been avoided, because for time is money, and the worker is being paid for the time that he is spending within the organization. So if he is remaining idle because of the poor planning of the organization, we call it as abnormal idle time. So here we can classify the idle time under three causes. One is productive causes, the other one is administrative causes, and the third one is economic causes. Now what is productive causes? Productive causes is waiting for work. As I told you, he comes in the morning and he's waiting for being given the work, whether it's manual labor or whether it is a blue collared job or a white collared job. He's just waiting for the work to be given to him. That's called as idle time. And sometimes he's waiting for receiving the tools or materials to start his work, or he's waiting for instructions from his supervisor about how to go about doing the work. Suppose there's a machine breakdown and he cannot do the work, then that's also because of productive causes. Due to power failure also, he may be unable to do his work. Administrative causes could be because of a surplus of plant and machinery. If the organization has brought in a lot of plant and machinery and it is remaining idle, and is put to no use, then it becomes a cost factor to the organization. Due to lack of proper planning and inefficiency of the organization, the labor can remain idle, and the workforce may decide to go on strike, refuse to do their work. They may decide to go for a lockout, so that also can cause idle time. Economic causes of idle time are because of the seasonal nature of industry. Some factories, some industries are seasonal in nature. They work only for a part of the year, so for the remaining part of the year they remain idle. Now suppose there is less demand for the goods that are manufactured in the organization. Obviously production need not continue at a high pace, and therefore the workers will remain idle. If there is severe competition, that means if the competitors are doing quite well and their goods are in great demand, obviously this organization need not produce goods on in the same quantity, because there is no much demand from the consumers, and therefore the workforce would remain idle. It if it is if it work cannot be distributed throughout the year, that also is because of economic causes. So because of all these reasons, there are chances of the labor remaining idle. Wage payment or labor remuneration. Wage payment or labor remuneration refers to the payment of actual wages to the workforce. Now if you pay enough money to the worker, then only they will be interested in doing the work for you. So when you pay money to the worker, at least his minimum standard of living should be ensured, and the payment of wages should be such that both the worker is happy as well as the employer is going to be happy. It should also satisfy the labor laws of the country. There should not be any limit on the maximum amount of earnings, and the worker should be encouraged to given the method of labor remuneration should be such that the worker should be encouraged to put in work more efficiently. So let's understand how this can be done. Now there are three main methods of labor remuneration. We have the time rate system, the piece rate system, and the incentive schemes. Now the time rate system is one of the oldest systems of labor remuneration, and in this system the amount of output is not important. The time that is spent by the worker in the organization, for that the worker gets the money. So the worker can be paid either for the number of hours that he has put in the organization, or if on a daily basis he may be paid, or he may be paid on a weekly basis, or he may be paid on a monthly basis. Now there's a formula for calculating the wages that is payable to him, which is number of hours worked into rate per hour. So let's say he has worked for 2 hours and the rate per hour is 20. So 2 hours into 20 rupees per hour, he will get 40 rupees and he can go home with that. Now suppose he has we are working out the problem based on number of days worked into rate per day. In certain cases the workers are paid on the basis of days. So let's take an example. Suppose he has worked for 1 day and the rate per day is 150, then that means he is going to earn 150 on one single day. So let us say he has worked for 2 days. If he has worked for 2 days, then it is 2 days worked into 150 rupees rate, which means he gets 300 at the end of 2 days. So this is how you calculate the time rate system. Now this system is generally adopted under the following situations where quality of work is more important than quantity. So time rate system basically does not take into consideration the output, rather it is giving more importance to the quality of the work. Similarly, there are certain types of work or certain kind especially indirect labor who are not directly associated with the production process in an organization. Like when I explained to you about indirect labor, I told you that the services of the security guard, the services of the sweeper in the organization, or the services of a supervisor, these are not directly related to the production process. These are works which help in facilitating the production process. So the wages that is paid to indirect labor is generally adopted on time rate system, and because here the time of work is important, the output of work is not important. Similarly, if the worker is a learner or apprentice, he is paid on time rate system, and if the work is done on a small scale, again the payment is done on time rate system.